Could you say a little bit about the background, the rationale for this LNG terminal that you're planning?
This is probably 8 or 9 years in the making. We started looking at LNG back in 2012. And the rationale, simply put, is that it's needed to ensure the energy security of the Philippines. Currently, the Philippines relies on a single indigenous gas field for all of its gas-fired production. That's 3,200 megawatts, relying or supplying about 21% of the electricity of the Philippines. And it's about to run out. So we hope to have this project up and running by 2022. And the idea is it can supplement and then eventually completely replace the Malampaya gas and keep the lights on and allow new projects to be developed.
Now, in the end, could you, without going into too much detail, obviously, but could you say something about why FirstGen chose BW LNG as your FSRU provider?
Absolutely. Well, we spent about a year, I think, in discussions with BW LNG. And then we went through a full tendering process looking at commercial, technical, and legal. At the end of it all, I think the answer is surprisingly simple, is that the BW LNG listened to what their customer, FirstGen, wanted. And they crafted a solution which most completely matched all of our requirements. So I think it pays to listen, and they did that very well. So we're very happy with the result.
So kudos to you, Ingvild. Well done. First of all, congratulations on a very important contract.
Thank you so much.
So can you tell us a little bit, for the people who are not familiar, what are your experiences in operating FSRUs?
So BW LNG has been in the LNG business since the early 70s and have built up one of the biggest gas fleets in the world. And then for like about 10 years ago, we started looking to see if we could use that competence to also do other floating infrastructure for gas, which we think is a very, very important part of the journey into our lower carbon society. And that's kind of when we decided to go into the FSRU business. We won our first contract about 6 years ago to Egypt. And since then, 4 more have followed. So today we have FSRUs in Egypt, as I mentioned, in Pakistan, in Brazil, El Salvador, and now the latest, the Philippines.
And I know, of course, that you have experiences from the Philippines on the crewing side for many years, and you have a long history here. But could you perhaps briefly tell us why you considered the Philippines as an interesting market for an FSRU?
Yeah, of course, you mentioned that we have been in the Philippines for more than 30 years and feel very kind of a strong connection. We are close to 4,000 employees in the Philippines. So it's a country close to our heart. And of course, we have looked at the Philippines for a long time also for business. And it's very interesting. Just a few days ago, Philippines came out with their target of reducing greenhouse gas emission by 75% by 2030. And we have seen this coming and then started working with FirstGen. We found a customer, I'd like to call you a partner now, that kind of had some of the same ambitions as we have. And then to be able to be part of helping Philippines to come to their target at the same time as we are, as Jon said, a part of the energy security to the Philippines. I really felt like this is something that resonates with us. So that was absolutely a part of why this was a project we really wanted to be part of.
And as you now will come into the Philippines with your amazing vessel, a huge vessel, the BW Paris, sometime next year, how do you see the future here, the energy market in general?
If you look at switching from coal, which I today think is about 50% of the power in the Philippines, just to do that switch to LNG reduces CO2 with around 50-60%. At the same time, and not so often mentioned, it takes away all your particular matters, all your SOx, and more or less kind of also the NOx, which causes a number of deaths and serious asthma and allergies. So this local pollution is also a very, very important part of it. And of course, if Philippines is going to reach that target, they need to bring in more gas, in our view, and that's kind of making this project, in our view, just the first step. So we hope to, together with FirstGen, be able to distribute gas to the whole of Philippines.
So I'll pass the last question and the same question to you, John. Energy future for the Philippines, LNG's future in the Philippines.
I absolutely agree with Ingvild. Our corporate philosophy is actually written behind me, which is forging collaborative pathways for a decarbonized and regenerative future. I think as an organization, we realize that just being sustainable isn't good enough anymore. We really need to look for ways to be regenerative. We know that we've got a long way to go, but this is an important first step, which is the easiest decarbonization that we can do is providing an alternative to coal in the form of gas with much lower emissions. But the other important feature of gas, of course, is that it can serve a wide range of operating roles. It can operate as base load, of course, but mid-merit and even peaking. And that means it fits in very well with intermittent renewables, which we want to grow as a nation also. So I think it's the two things in tandem that can really make a difference. And then the other thing, which I completely agree with, is we want to try and democratize the use of gas. Up to this point, there's been very few customers of gas in the Philippines. And now with changes in technology, it's possible to bring gas in smaller parcels, so-called small scale LNG, to new markets. And in an archipelagic nation like the Philippines, that represents a fantastic opportunity.